every point from 5 down to like your scratch or even to your 1, it's so much harder to get there and
Right.
keep that than it is shaving off that 10.
Welcome everybody into another episode of the Fairways to Fortune podcast. I'm your host, Joe Canfield, founder and CEO of Fairways Relationship Management. Sitting down today with Kyle Kumpf. Kyle, I'm excited to have this conversation with you and to talk about how you've used golf to find success in your life.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Kyle, we connected over LinkedIn a little bit ago and chatted on the phone for a little bit. And we realized that we both have very, very different approaches to the way that we play golf and the way that we think about the game. And so I'm excited to give the listeners some perspective on maybe a little bit of a different way to think about how to play golf and how to learn the game. And then I'm excited to talk to you about your background as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good conversation.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, when we chatted, you told me that you started golf later in life, and then you said at 11 years old, which is definitely not later in life. I found that to be pretty funny. And then you told me that one of your goals is to get your handicap low enough so that you can play in U.S. Open sectional qualifying, which for our listeners who don't know, that your handicap needs to be below a 1.4 to be able to sign up for sectional qualifying for the U.S. Open. So, Kyle, take me through your background, why you've maybe set that for a goal for yourself, and then let's kind of talk about where you are and what you do for a career and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so like you said, I started golf when I was 11, and all my other friends that lived in the neighborhood had been playing, since they were 4 and 5 years old. So they were already fairly good when middle school came around. And I think, like I shared with you, one day I decided to pick up a club of my friends. Couldn't hit the ball, or I made contact, but it thinned it, topped it, all the stuff that a first timer you would expect from them. But I was hooked for whatever reason. Something about the game of golf, I just thought I had to figure this thing out. How hard can it be to hit this stationary ball with this club? At that time I played baseball. I could hit a fastball.
Yeah.
Swing a bat at and hit it. So why couldn't I hit this stationary ball? And I just fell in love with the sport and wanted to figure it out. And so I just started playing a ton. And by the time I made it into high school, freshman year, I was able to make the varsity team and played varsity all through high school. And the sport has stuck with me ever since. So I've been playing now a little over 25 years. And continually trying to get better at it. I tell people now that if I had my game now, if I were to play myself back in high school, I'd win 10 out of 10 times. But that's the interesting thing about golf. I may not be as athletic and as strong as I was,
Right.
but my mental game is so much better than what it was back then. That if I had that back then, I think I could have gone even further and played at the college level. But that wasn't what happened.
Right. I always think that the Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, like if coach would have put me into the fourth quarter, I'd have gone pro. We would have won state, right? Like I have those exact same thoughts. I talked about it on a previous episode that I didn't play high school golf because I just didn't wake up for my tee time. I'm like, well, how would my life be different if I had actually made my tee time for tryouts, right? But that's awesome. I love that background. And you mentioned the mental game and how hard it is. And maybe you're not as athletic. And so maybe that feels like one of the barriers for people getting into golf is, oh, I'm not athletic, I can't play. How have you kind of thought through that? You mentioned you played baseball, but now as you kind of are getting older and I wake up in the morning and if I don't sleep the right way, I'm in pain. Like it's just, that's the way that it is when I get older. Right. And so how do you kind of work through that a little bit? And like, if you need to go out and have a hard practice day, like what are you doing to make sure that you can actually, get out on the course and feel good that day?
So something I've started to do a lot more recently is light body weight exercises to keep my lower body. And so I have a bad back and a bad hip. I had an injury that I got back in 2020. Actually got my bad back in high school, but being young, you can fight through it. Not so much whenever you're in your 30s. So every day, first thing in the morning, even if I'm not going to play golf or practice golf, I'm doing some air squats, lunges, push-ups, various types of um, they're called dead bugs, something to work out the core, and just keep those muscles strong and engage them on a daily basis. And I found that as I've gotten more consistent at doing that, and then coupling that, even going playing some a lot of golf, I found that I'm waking up in the morning now, like feeling better. I'm not as stiff, not as tight. Still need to do some stretching. So I'm just keep taking care of my body that way, so that I'm, ready to go onto the golf course and make the best use of the little time that I have in between career and father and husband duties.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in the exact same boat. We have the career, and I've got 3 kids. You've got one more on top of that, and so I can only
Yeah.
imagine where you're at with that. How do you find the time to actually get out and practice? Because to get down to, and I want to get into, where the goal of yours to play in the U.S. Open or play in the qualifying for the U.S. Open came from, but where are you finding the time to actually practice?
Well, it helps. We live in a subdivision right next to a club that I'm a member of, so it's easy just to hop over there and just do a quick range session or even play a few holes. I don't have to make a tee time and go make a full 18 or a full 9 somewhere 30 minutes to an hour away. So that's very helpful. Um, my two middle sons are into golf, so they like to go over there with me. And most every day they're saying, "Hey, Dad, let's go to the range, or can we go play?" And so that makes it pretty easy to get out. And if they're with me, my practice is a little different because I obviously got to be mindful of where they are and what they're doing because they are 4 and 9 years old, so they like to get into trouble. So my focus can't be solely on my game, but at least I'm over there practicing something, and also helping them practice and develop their game. So that helps give me, helps me put in the time. And then also last winter, I put together the least expensive simulator I could find as far as
Nice.
my garage. So I got the launch monitor, connected that to an iPad, and then just got a hitting net. I don't have anything fancy set up. So then I could, at least in the winter months here, work on keeping my golf muscles engaged, keeping my swing like I was in season, and not lose all that work I did last year and into this year. And I found that this year, going out for my first round, I could feel it was still the first round of the year after 4 months of not playing on a golf course, but the swing felt much better. So having that has helped quite a bit as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, the seasonality thing is tough. And just for our listeners, where do you play and practice out of?
Well, that's right. I'm in the Midwest, excuse me, in Iowa. So we have some long, cold winters here. So last year we got
Yeah.
lucky, and there were actually guys playing golf on Christmas Day here.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but that's an anomaly. The latest I've ever played golf up to that point out here is very, very early November, but it's cold. But we had some
Yeah.
late snow last year, so it was a pretty dry winter early on. But typically golf courses here shut down November through February, and then maybe if you're lucky, you might get some opening in March, and then officially the club I'm part of opens in April. So there's a big 5 month gap there where if you don't have a simulator at home or access to one locally, um,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to keep that golf game in shape here.
Yeah. Our last guest is down in Palm Springs, Florida, and that's a very different experience down there than it is in Iowa. It's fun to me to see where like PGA professionals live. Like Jason Day lives in Ohio, which I feel like is the
Yeah,
weirdest thing. That like, hey, why would you live in a place that has winter when you're a PGA professional? Like, you obviously he's got an unbelievable practice facility like in his
yes.
backyard, but the seasonality thing is tough, and it's interesting to watch the level of golf that's being played as the indoor simulator and the technology, the access to technology is becoming more and more of a thing. I know
Hmm.
in the last few years out here in Utah, we've had simulator bays pop up on almost every corner. Like, it's crazy how many of them there are. Um, and I don't know if it's the same out in Iowa where you can kind of go and have access to TrackMan. Sounds like you've got something in your garage, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I have a SkyTrack in my garage, about one used, so that made it pretty affordable. But around here locally, my club has two bays that they open up in the winter. So you can go over there. The public courses around here all now have indoor TrackMan bays. And then there's a local company here it's strictly an indoor golfing facility, and they have TrackMan. So even being here in Iowa, within max 15 minutes, I can be at a pretty high quality facility if I want to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Kyle, let's jump into your goals and some of the stuff that you're doing to get there. And then I want to circle back to you taking your boys out golfing and how that's kind of, strengthened your relationship with your boys, because that's something I do with my son that has been just incredible for us. But let's start by jumping into you wanting to get into playing in the sectional qualifier for the U.S. Open. And this is where our golf games definitely are very, very different. You're a very analytical person. You're telling me, and I'll have you tell me, but I'm very much a feel player, right? Like I can go out and I can say, okay, that round didn't feel right, or I cut that ball because of the feel here. I don't really jump into numbers or fairways hit or greens in regulation. Like I barely started tracking those like this year. So take me through a little bit of your approach and some of the stuff you're doing. You told me you've got like a big spreadsheet and everything that you've been tracking everything in, which I've been super curious about.
Yeah, so I've been tracking my stats in the Gin app, or the Gin app. I guess it depends who you talk to, how they pronounce it. So I'll keep my whole stats in there. And then I also started setting some goals each round for certain things that I wanted to achieve, because I thought those would lead to lower scores more consistently. And so recently, I think this was a couple weekends ago, I sat down and I had all this information from all these rounds, and some of those rounds I'd actually started collecting more information than just putts, greens regulation, fairways. I started keeping track of what I call flop shots. So literally those things where, for example, off the tee, you hit one into a hazard, or you hit one in OB, so there's a penalty shot involved, or you just hit something and you're in play, but you're obstructed from the green. You have to change your next shot to get back in play, and then hopefully get up and down for a par or something like that. That would be an example of one. So I started tracking that for off the tee, on approach shots, pitch shots, so anything around the green or within 70 yards of the green where you miss it or just hit a total junk shot, and then something like 3 putts. So that would be a slot putt. Yeah. And so looking at that across, I believe around 55-ish rounds, I found, and I was feeling I was leaving about 2 to 3 shots around out there to 3 putts or just these flop shots. But that was just a feeling I had, a guess. I hadn't actually tracked it. So once I actually did this and looked at it, I found that my average per round is 2.7 flop shots, so close to 3 shots just from these kind of mental errors, essentially.
Right.
To me, someone who's averaging 77 on 18 holes, I'm like, oh, I could be averaging under 75 pretty easily if I could get rid of these silly shots. That's not about going out and, oh, you got to make a bunch more birdies, because even pros don't average a ton of birdies on 18 holes.
Right.
It's not about you got to go out and stick the pin a lot more, get your approach shots tighter. It was just play more boring golf. Hit the green, 2-putt. Always give yourself a shot at a putt and making a par. Don't hit those wayward shots so often. So now then seeing that information then gives me some information or insight into where am I losing these shots in my score, which are also then impacting my handicap index. So we can get into where it is and where I want to get it to, so that I can play in a U.S. Open sectional qualifier. But anyway, that slop shot factor is what I'm calling it. Again, that's not totally my idea. I learned that from another guy I listened to on another podcast, Joe Suggs. He's a PGA master coach, because he tracks something similar with his students. But now that's helped me put some things in place to practice on, to then take out to the course and put to the test, and me shoot lower scores and work towards that goal I have.
I think that's awesome. And I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people that play a lot of golf, is they don't necessarily know what they need to work on, right? Like
Hmm.
I know, like for myself, like everything feels pretty solid. I could probably tighten up approach shots, things like that. But until I go out and I'm looking at, okay, I'm missing strokes here, I'm losing strokes off the tee, I'm losing strokes, putting or whatever it is. And I used the Arcos system for a little bit
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
saw the shots gained and shots lost there. And obviously, I didn't spend a ton of time, practicing any of that stuff, and I've pulled those off my club since. But having access to that kind of data shows you that when you've been looking at your data, what has it shown you that where are you losing the most strokes? I know you're saying these wayward shots or penalty strokes, but are those coming in one spot over another?
Yeah, so I could tell you today I'm losing one full shot around off the tee, and I could tell you I'm at my approach drops. It's point 0.2. So relatively speaking, it's not my approaches where I'm losing a lot of my scoring opportunities, and then putting and pitch shots, so more like the short game, I'm losing point 0.8, so up there close to a full shot. Um,
Yeah. And
but knowing
what
that
are you
then gives
tracking? Sorry, what are you tracking your strokes gained against? Are you looking at a scratch player, or are you doing that based off of the handicap that you want to get to?
no. So I'm not comparing this. This is not strokes gained. I'm strictly comparing my game, myself to myself. I'm losing
Okay.
a shot. Yeah, so I'm averaging one of the 2.7 slop shots I'm averaging per round. One full shot of that is off the tee. So I'm
Okay.
spraying a driver right, left, or something like that. Yeah, so it's strictly me measuring myself against myself.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because TrackMan released a feature that I love and I use it all the time. That
Hmm.
it jumps back and forth, so you can set your yardages. I typically do it from like 80 yards to 120 yards because that's where I hit a lot of my approach shots from, and it'll
Hmm.
jump you back and forth in the yardages, right? And it'll give you a number on strokes gained or strokes lost based on your proximity to the hole, and you can set that number to I usually do it just against a Tour Pro, just because that's whatever. Like I'm good enough, I can do that. But you can set that to be like, okay, to 10 handicap, how many strokes am I losing to a 10 handicap? So that's why I asked, so what are you comparing yourself to? And maybe this gets us into the U.S. Open sectional qualifier and what you need to get to do that.
Yeah, so what I'm using this flop shot factor for is I have my actual scoring average, which I think right now sits at exactly 77.4, based off of what I've actually shot. Each round, if I were to subtract those flop shots, I have what's called, like, here's my obtainable score. This is what I could have shot with not getting much more birdies. It was just get rid of the penalties or the three putts, and this is your score, which then would have translated into different differentials and could have given me, here's what your obtainable, feasible handicap index could be. So I'm
Okay.
trying to say, okay, where is my game today, and what is feasibly obtainable for me, given my current game? That, do I have to do something astronomically different to potentially hit my goal, or am I already pretty close if I just clean up these flop shots?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that if you can eliminate a lot of those mistakes, the big miss, your
Hmm.
scoring obviously goes way up. And you said it, boring golf is good golf, and that's hard to understand. And it took me a long time to
Yeah,
figure that out too. And
yeah.
until I was probably 23, 24 years old, I was just trying to hit the ball as far as I possibly could every single time. And it was all over the place, right? And then when I finally kind of
Hmm.
took a step back, I put a really heavy shaft in my driver. I probably leave 20, 30 yards on the tee, but I took my dispersion rate from, being here to being, 10, 15 yards. So I know where it is
Yeah.
every single time. And I think that's a hard thing to figure out, especially if you're not playing a lot of golf, right?
Hmm.
To just go out and say, okay, I just need to be smooth. I just need to be quick. I need to control my athleticism, is what it is.
Hmm.
Because you'll watch
Yeah.
like NFL players try to play golf, or like even NHL players who are probably the best golfers out of all the pro sports, the four major pro sports. You watch some of those guys swing, and you're like, what in the world is going on here? Like, these guys are pro athletes. Like, how are they looking this bad when they swing a golf club?
Hmm. Yeah. Some of it, I think, comes down to we all have an ego, and
Right.
you notice what your playing opponents are hitting into a green as far as yardage, and you're like, oh, I can hit a 9 iron on buck 62. It's It's like, Kyle, no,
Yeah.
you can't. So don't try. It's going to throw off your swing. Yeah, who cares if they can bomb at 300 easily? If you hit it 270, you're fine. Like there's no need to try and keep up with them. You got to play your game. And I think that's something, a trap we can get into when we're playing with our buddies or playing in a league or something. You start paying attention to others around you, what they're doing, and in golf, it's not like in football where you've got to pay attention to the defense or the offense. You focus on yourself and the course, what the other guys are doing. That's their deal. Just make sure you're
Yeah.
not playing out of turn or not standing in front of them when they're trying to hit the ball.
Yeah, right. No, I really love that. And I love when I'm coaching somebody, I talk to them about golf is a you against the golf course. The other players are playing the same course as you are, but they're in their own head. They have their own swing. They have all their own stuff that's going on. And so if you can figure out like, okay, it doesn't matter what they're doing, or if you can think about it in the way of, it was put to me this way. And I love this thinking. And on our last episode, Brian Jacobs kind of talked about it a little bit too, where if you can assign a value to every stroke that you have. So say for you want to go out and shoot 74. Say, okay, I have 74 strokes to finish these 18 holes. And my coach does this with his college players where he says, okay, you guys have 74 strokes. And as soon as you hit 74 strokes, you are done playing. And so he'll have guys that go and they only play 15 holes because they've hit 74 after 15 holes. Or he'll have guys that end up playing, 19 holes or 18. They'll play the full 18, they'll play 19, maybe even 20 holes. And that's how he'll do his qualifying, is based on the person who got the furthest with the strokes that they had. And that way you stop thinking about, okay, I need to birdie this hole or I need to par this hole. It's assigning a value to every stroke that you have on the golf course. And I love that thinking. And I feel like that's kind of what you're getting at a little bit, where it's like, okay, I got to think through, not I need 8 birdies in this round. It's I need to play these holes with this many strokes.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's an interesting idea. Actually, I might challenge myself to go do that in some of my practice rounds.
It's fun. I've never done it, but because it makes me anxious. It's like I paid how much to play 18 holes? I don't want to have to stop early.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. Yeah, so we were talking about my goal of this 1 point, hitting that 1.4 index number. It's kind of like a magic number. So my current index is, as of this past weekend, is 3.7.
Nice.
My low has been 2.7. And so that's getting down there. But I tell people, because they say, "Oh, you're like, that's really low." I'm like, yeah, but to go from like a 15 to a 10 to a 7, like that you can do pretty quickly. Play a lot of golf, fix a couple things, you can get there instead of pretty easily. Going from that 5, even like, I don't know if you listen to the Chasing Scratch podcast, but those guys are awesome and entertaining. But getting every point from 5 down to like your scratch or even to your 1, it's so much harder to get there and keep that than it is shaving off that 10, going from 15 down to a 5, just because it's all these little things you got to get really, really good at and play boring golf. But playing boring golf is actually really, really hard. So by keeping track of those flop shots, what that's told me is my current index is 3.7. If I were to eliminate or not eliminate those, because you're going to have wayward shots, even pros do.
Yeah, you're going to have bad shots. Pros.
If I were to minimize those, so say I got that down to, I took out 80% of those, and I got my average down to less than 1 on average per round. Well, and I had applied that to my past 54 rounds, whatever I have in my spreadsheet, my index would be at a 1.6. So I'm like, hey, I can get there. It's within my ability to get there, I think. If I now go work on these specific parts of my game. And that's where the data is helping me. And what that actually helps me do when I'm out there playing. So when I'm out there playing, I'm not doing much of math in my head, no more than I know it's discharges to the hole and this is where I want to hit it to. But I'm not a Bryson DeChambeau and doing all kinds of practice in my head. I keep
rocket scientist out there.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners,
it helps me set expectations. Like if I know if my average score is a 77 right now, so if I go out there and shoot 77 or 76, I should be pretty happy with that because that's right at average. Something I said about my upper end. If I shoot 81, that's possible. I shouldn't be so frustrated that I never want to play golf again. Like you're going to have those days, and my absolute lowest score in my tracker is a 70. So if I shoot low 70s, I should be really happy because I played much better than my average. So just having that, knowing that there's going to be a variation in my rounds and the data backs it up, I know as long as my rounds are fluctuating around an average, then that's my expectation, and it actually puts less pressure on me when I'm out there on the course.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of a misconception, and I want to run through how handicaps are actually calculated, because people think that you should go out and shoot your handicap every single time that you go play, but that's just not the case. The stats actually, you're going to shoot your handicap about 25% of the time that you play. And the way that the handicap system is calculated now is it's an average of your best 8 rounds of the last 20 that you've played. And so that is how you calculate a handicap index. And so for you to be a 1.4, like you've got to play 20 rounds of golf and have 8 of those be basically even par.
Essentially, yeah. You gotta, and it's not
depending on course ratings and slopes. And there's all these other factors that go into it. But
But simplistically, if there's a par 72 and I want to get to a 1.4, I've got to be shooting basically 73. I got to have 8 of those 20 got to be close to the 73. And again, depending if the rating was a 72 and the slope was, a certain number, but simplistically,
right. And like, for example, I played my PGA test round I shot 2 under, and when I entered it into the Gin app, my differential was actually positive because the course was set up so easy that day. And so there's all these little factors that go into that. And I mean, it sounds like you play you're a member of a club, so you probably play the same course a lot. How does that factor into it as well?
Yeah, so actually this year and last year, I intentionally set out to not only play that course, because you can get very used to the course playing it from the tip, and that can get your handicap down pretty quickly or quicker. Just because you're so familiar with the course, how the greens are, and all those tricky spots, and where to miss, where not to miss, all that kind of stuff. So I actually intentionally played different courses in the area that I had played before, but don't play very often, or some I had never played. And so my actual index is I call it a more realistic index of playing different courses, more difficulty, faster, higher slopes and higher ratings. So I would encourage people, if you want to get a real true measure of your playing ability, to not just go play, even if you're a member of a club, because even those clubs, they give you reciprocal rights other places.
Yeah.
Go use them, go play some other places, because then that's going to give you a truer, I think, an index that travels better with you, especially if you're going to go play some competitions outside of your own club.
I think that's and there's benefits to having a handicap index, even if you're not trying to get it low enough. Like Scotty Scheffler was interviewed today as part of the Tour Championship, and he was talking about how when he's at home, he plays golf with his friends that aren't professional golfers, and he has to play to a +7. So he's saying, but this is the beautiful thing about golf, is like, I can go play with my buddies and it could still be competitive. Like, I'm the best golfer in the entire world, and I can still go play with somebody that's a 7, 8, 9 handicap, and I can still lose. Like, he's like, I don't very often, but it can happen. Like, and that's what I love about the game, is if you really do want to get into that level where it's fun to go play with anybody. And if you want to get into the level of like actually competing with people, you can do that with a handicap index, which is really cool. And it's not expensive to be a member of your, local amateur golf association. A couple, maybe $60-$70 a year is all. It's less than a greens fee for sure. But I find it super interesting. And, but Kyle, I want to switch gears a little bit here and jump into how you've gotten your kids into golf, because I feel like that's a fun conversation and something to think through, because golf's becoming more and more popular. And I tell people about this all the time, is like, I didn't play golf in high school. I played baseball and I played ice hockey, and it always seemed like golf was the thing that the kids that didn't do anything else did. Right. And it was just, that was what it was, 20 years ago. And it's changed now, and golf is something
Hmm.
that people are doing. And so I'm curious on your approach to getting your kids into golf, and how that has maybe strengthened the relationship with your boys.
Yeah, so I think part of it is, they just have a natural curiosity. Hey, Dad's going off and he carries this big bag full of these clubs with him, and he gets to go hit a ball. Like, what's that all about? Um, and so initially, I just took him over to the range, and first my 9-year-old, and he had some cheap set of clubs that we found used, and said, all right, just here's the ball, here's the club, give him some general tips on how you hold it. Just here, you have fun. I wasn't trying to like immediately try and perfect their giving tons of advice. It was just more about, let's go to the range, hit some balls, have some fun. We'll go inside, get a lemonade, maybe some nachos, and go home. So it was more like that fun experience initially. Um, and then my 9-year-old was like, hey, I think I might want to do this more, play against some other kids my own age. And so then that got into the junior golf program. So he had that to go to during the week or every week in the summer. And then his younger brother, our 4-year-old, of course, gets to see all of that. And then he's curious and he's like, hey, Daddy, I want to go to the range. So, okay. So I take him over with another set of clubs that we had and find out, yeah, he loves playing this too. But, oh, by the way, he's left-handed because he's trying to swing this right-handed club left-handed and hit the balls the wrong direction, on the range. And he's the one now that's almost every day, hey, Dad, let's go practice. Or, hey,
Yeah,
can I go hit balls in the garage? Or, hey, let's go play. And obviously he doesn't play from the tees. He, tees off from like 75 yards out, but that's
right.
his
Yeah,
that's his area. And he'll go play a full 9 holes with me, and I'll play my game, and we'll get to that spot where he's close enough to tee off, and he hops out and throws his tee in the ground, tees off, and plays until he actually gets into the hole. Or if he's really struggling, it's like, all right, buddy, let's pick it up and we'll go to the next one. And it's really been more about just being simple with him right now, especially the 4-year-old, because it's really more just about something fun to do for him.
yeah,
Although he seems to be pretty naturally athletic, and I think he's going to pick it up, and we'll see where that goes. And then with the 9-year-old now, I'm to the point where I can give him some more tips, and he can kind of listen. And this last time we went out, he actually hit some of the best shots I've ever seen him hit on command. And
that's
things
awesome.
are starting to kind of click with him now a little bit. So yeah, it's a great time to be out there with my boys and bond with them. And I have no expectations for their game. I just want them to enjoy it. And if all we ever do is go out and play a few times as father and son, that's fine. But if they become passionate about it like I did, then awesome. And we'll see where that
Yeah.
goes.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's so much fun. And I have the same experience as you do. I take my son out and, he loves hitting balls. We lived in Las Vegas for a winter during COVID, and like it gets dark in Las Vegas in the winter, like 4:30 in the afternoon. And so I'd get off work, but we happen to live in a place that's at a driving range that was lit up at night. And so we'd go over and hit balls at night, and it was always so much fun to go do that. And he'd always be the one saying, hey, I want to go hit balls. And now he's like, hey, I want to go play golf with you and grandpa. And so we get to go out and do that. And it's so much fun. And just spending that time together when you're kind of away from everything is such a valuable thing for me, which is awesome. But Kyle, I got to ask again one more time about how you find the time to play, because I know my wife gets anxious about it. I have my oldest is a boy, and then I have 2 younger girls, and we don't really take them out very often. But how do you find the time? I know you told me that you work remote, and that helps a little bit. But any tips for people who are struggling to find time to practice, or even just get out and play at all?
Well, for me, I'm blessed to have a loving wife who understands my healthy addiction I have to golf. She's ridden in the cart with me once, and that was on my 30th birthday. That was like my present, which she rode in the cart with me, playing over in
Nice.
Chicago somewhere. She has no interest in the sport, but she understands that I love it. She's into horseback riding.
Okay.
I'm not really that into that, but I go and support her whenever she rides. And our daughter is also heavy into that, so they have that thing going.
That's awesome.
But we all are very close as a family, but we also understand that we have these other passions that are part of who we are. And help. I think golf and horseback riding actually can help people develop into better versions of themselves. One of the reasons why I love golf is because it helps me prove to myself that I can do hard things. I joke that golfers are gluttons for punishment because we spend most of our time out there making a ton of mistakes, and there's all kinds of lessons you can learn from that. So I just asked, like, hey, it's golf season. Good thing. So it's golf season short here in Iowa. So I can say, hey, honey, these 3-4 months, core golf months, if I can get out once a week, that'd be awesome. And I'll be flexible. And what I try and do is use PTO. So times I would normally be gone anyway, or heads down working, I'll take that as PTO, go play golf. And sometimes I'll try and get 36 in it one day to make it a long day. But that way I'm not taking time away on the weekend from family time. So that has helped balance things out with the golf game, especially here more recently as the kids are getting into more activities. And then now over the past couple of years with a couple of the boys getting into it, that helps free things up because then they can come with me and I'm not leaving my wife with 4 kids.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the balance, and just understanding that, yes, I want to be the best husband and father I can be. But I have this passion for golf that I just can't take, and I would like to nurture it as much as I can without without any detriment to the family. So that's kind of how we've balanced it out.
And how did the conversation go when you told her, hey, I really want to try to play, I want to try to qualify for the US Open? I mean, that's obviously a ton of dedication, a ton of times, and it's not exactly the cheapest sport to do, right? And I mean, I tell people, Mike, if you want to be a professional golfer, you need to have unlimited time and unlimited money and resources, because that's what it really takes. You need to spend a ton of time on it, and it's expensive to enter tournaments and things like that. So what was that conversation like to say, hey, I want to play in what's one of the, it's a major tournament. There's only 4 of those a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about golf. So you can be the biggest football fan, basketball fan. You can play those sports, been really good. But you couldn't get put onto the actual football field as a receiver and actually play the game with other guys. You'd get crushed, literally.
Right.
With golf, that's not the case. Guys like you and me put enough work into it. We could actually qualify for a major championship and go play against the absolute best players in the world. Are we going to win it? No. But we can be on that same field, same course, playing alongside the number 2, number 3, number 6, number 20 guy in the world, playing the game. What other athlete can say that?
Yeah.
So that's really the driving force behind that is, if I don't ever achieve it, my end goal is not to actually play in the U.S. Open. If it happens, that would just be like the cherry
icing on the cake. Yeah.
Yeah, because there are 9,000, 10,000 guys every year start off trying to qualify, and they fill 60-ish spots. So less than a percentage of the guys that start actually make it through. So it's a very, very low likelihood that you'll make it through. And what I tell people, at those, if you make it to the longest day, you're actually not just playing against other amateurs, you're playing against other tour pros who just happen to be outside the automatic qualifying spots for the Open. So depending which one you're playing in, you could be playing against this guy who's number 62 in the world. And he's pretty damn good. So so just that experience of being able to go to these qualifiers and still play against a pro is a pretty awesome experience that I would remember for the rest of my life. So that's the driving force, is I want to go up, and I do not have any delusions about my golf game compared to a pro. I know I'm nowhere close to a tour pro, but the opportunity to go and play against them is very intriguing and attractive to me. So that's really why I want to go try and get my handicap to where I can even attempt to qualify, for a U.S. Open. And again, I like to do hard things, and getting down there just takes these continual little incremental improvements to get there, which is also what I have done for a living for my entire career. Is it's all been focused around process improvement and continuous improvement at various levels and organizations. And golf is just the way that I do that personally.
That's awesome. I love that. That's great insight. And golf is one of the coolest things. And I love the US Open every year to find out who those people are, the amateurs who got in. There's a hockey official. I'm a big NHL fan, and there's a on ice hockey official that qualified a couple of years ago, and like just listening to them talk about it and the stories that they tell about going through it. And you mentioned the longest day. That's the last day of qualifying to get into the U.S. Open, and it's a bunch of different sites. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of different sites across the country, all played on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, a lot of them are tour pros that didn't get an exemption, they didn't qualify, so they got to go through the qualification process. And there's some heartbreak stories that go through that. And the same thing with Q School, like it's coming down to the end of the year, and so the guys that aren't getting their tour status renewed automatically, they're going to have to go back through Q School. And you've got people that makes or breaks their lives in some cases, right? Like they've spent so much time, so much dedication and trying to go pro, and then it's like, okay, one day. And even like Scotty Scheffler, number one in the world, he says the hardest day of golf I played was my last day of qualifying school for the Korn Ferry Tour. And he only made it on by one stroke. And who would have known had he missed the putt on 18? Is Scotty Scheffler the number one player in the world? Does he ever make it? I mean, probably. Like, the guy's unbelievable, but still, like, that's the razor thin margin that the game of golf has. And I think it's so interesting that you can even go play the same courses that these are played at. I mean, I've played the Kiowa Ocean course a few times, and that the PGA Championship was played there. I made the same putt on 18 that Phil Mickelson made to hold the PGA Championship. Like, just to think about that, you can't do that in any sport. I can't walk into the Staples Center and go jack up a 3 if I wanted to, right? Like, it's just not a thing.
No. Yeah, I mean, I got to go play. I've played TPC Scottsdale shortly after the Waste Management Open before, and I played 16 and I birdied. I hit a 20-foot birdie putt. I'm like,
nice.
That's.
You didn't get showered in beer though. That was
Didn't get showered in beer or anything. No. I mean, but it's just those opportunities where you can go literally, recreate shots and moments that these tour pros have experienced. Obviously, without the pressure that they are under, but you get to go walk the land that they walk on.
That's awesome. Well, Kyle, we're running out of time here, so I want to wrap up. But what kind of last advice do you have for people, and what's next for you, and where can we learn more about what you're trying to do and maybe follow along your journey a little bit?
Yeah, well, my little closing comment is, try and get a little bit better every day. That's what I'm doing. And if you want to follow along with what I'm doing as far as improving my golf game, I'm starting to post some more videos on LinkedIn, kind of describing the data I'm tracking, how I'm using it, why I'm using it, how it's helping me in my golf game, but also how I use that same type of thinking mentality in my career, and how I have used it and had success with it, and developing people and teams and helping them to get better every day.
That's awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll stay in touch. I hope to maybe get out that way sometime soon and play some golf, or if you ever find yourself in Utah, I'd be happy to host you out here and get a little elevation. And you'll feel a lot better about how far the ball goes.
Yeah, I hear Utah has some amazing golf tracks. So
we have some fun. We have some really fun golf out here, and a lot of it's public golf, which is fantastic. So you're welcome anytime. I'd love to have you out, and thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thank you as well.